Can Protestants make it to heaven if what the Catholic Church teaches, that there's no salvation outside the church, is true? This video will answer that question directly, and I want everyone to know that this video is a representation of what the Catholic Church teaches. I'm not taking shots at Protestants here, and I'm not trying to make enemies. I'm simply presenting what the church teaches to the best of my ability. So here we go. In order for someone to be saved, according to the Catholic understanding, they have to be saved through the Catholic Church. It is a dogma of the Catholic Church that no one is saved outside of the Catholic Church. In the same way that nobody who wasn't on Noah's Ark was saved from the flood, nobody who is not a member of the church is saved. So does that mean that the church teaches that every single person who's ever died as a practicing Protestant has gone to hell? No, and let me explain. God does not blame people for that which they cannot help, or that which is unavoidable, or that which isn't their fault. So whenever a Protestant dies, there's a way in which they can be saved, although their salvation still comes through the Catholic Church. And the way that they can be saved is by God offering them grace and them having something called invincible ignorance. What is invincible ignorance? In order to be invincibly ignorant, there's 3 requirements that you have to have. 1 is pretty obvious. You have to not know something. You have to be ignorant. So for a Protestant, maybe they grew up in a place where there was no Catholic Church, and they didn't even know that the Catholic Church existed. Granted, since the advent of the internet, that seems more and more unlikely. But hypothetically, perhaps somebody doesn't even know that there are other religions than Lutheranism, because everyone in the town they grew up in was a Lutheran. Well, in that case, they don't know that there is a Catholic Church. So they're not blamed for not acting in accordance with something they didn't know. 2, after that, you have to not know. You have to not have had a reasonable chance to know. So if somebody's getting ready for a test and they're about to go study, but then instead they decide to go play video games or hang out with their friends, and then the next day the test rolls around and they have the test in front of them and they're about to start and they realize, I don't know any of the answers. Well, you're ignorant of the answers, but it's your fault that you were ignorant of the answers. You could have chosen to study as you were supposed to, but you didn't. So now it's your fault that you're ignorant. Whereas if somebody has a family member that's sick, or they're sick, or they have some legitimate excuse and they don't know the answers to the test because they didn't have a chance to study for a legitimate reason, then the teacher gives them a break. In the same way, if somebody's driving down the road and they see a speed limit sign coming up and they intentionally cover their eyes and try to not see the speed limit, and they get pulled over and the cop says, "Do you know what the speed limit was?" And they say, "No, I don't, so you can't give me a ticket." That's not going to work. They didn't know the speed limit, but they ought to have known it. So in order to be invincibly ignorant, you have to not know something, and you have to not have had a chance to know it. You have to not have reasonably been able to get access to that information. And then the third thing that's required for invincible ignorance to work is you have to have amended your life had you known better. So if you do something wrong ignorantly and you don't know any better, and then you figure out the results of your action and that what you did was wrong, but you like the result and you would have done it anyway, that doesn't excuse you. Let's say that you're hunting and you see something stirring in a bush and you take aim and you shoot at the thing in the bush that you think is a deer. You walk over because you know that you hit something, and you look in the bush and it turns out it was actually one of your enemies who you just didn't like. And you realize, oh, I didn't know that I was shooting at my enemy. I didn't know that. But dang, I got lucky that I had killed him and I didn't know any better, right? If you're in that situation where you didn't know any better, you didn't have a chance to know maybe, but you wouldn't have changed your attitude and your behavior, that type of ignorance does not excuse you. So in order to be invincibly ignorant, you need these 3 things. You need to not know something. You need to not have had a reasonable chance to know it. And you have to have the disposition to change if you had known. If Protestants meet those three requirements, then even if they die, apparently outside the church, practicing a Protestant faith exteriorly, then with God's grace cooperating, they can be saved through the Catholic Church. That's what the church means by invincibly ignorant. That's what the church means whenever she says that there is a chance for people who die not practicing the Catholic faith on the outside to be saved.